I'm bored. Let's read a book. Ah! The table was filled with platters, mostly of fruit and vegetables, with a variety of cheeses and some thin slices of meat. Two smaller platters bore a selection of breads. I concentrated on the fruits, noting apples, sour pears, and chestnuts, not to mention the heap of red berries. The plates were heavy gray stoneware, serviceable and banded with a thin green border, like something that might have been produced by one of my mother's better apprentices after a year. Beside the plates were matching heavy mugs, small towels in place of napkins, and spoons and forks. No knives. The black oak surface was polished but bare, without even rush mats under the plates. Talrin stood by the head of the table, set for 8, 3 on a side and 1 on each end. The space on his right was vacant. One on his left stood Dorothy. On her left was Merton. The foot of the table was vacant. So was the other space on the left, as were all the spaces on the right. If you would take the other end, Laris? Since he was a master of some sort, and since it wasn't exactly a request, I moved over and stood at the end, waiting for the others to arrive. Samuel came next, his balding forehead shiny, and his remaining thin brown hair damp. The loss of road dust and grime made him look younger. He gave Talrin an almost shy smile. If he would take the middle, Samuel did just what I had done. He nodded and eased up to his indicated position. As he stepped around the table, Rin and Crystal appeared together, still whispering like girls after school. They stopped as they saw Talrin looking at them. If you would take the place between Merton and Laris, Rin, and you, Crystal, the space across from her. That left Tamra, who seemed already to be the last one anywhere. She still hadn't appeared and would have to sit next to Talrin. I didn't think that was a coincidence somehow. Talrin let us stand for a little while longer, then nodded. Please be seated. I think we should begin. Even before we could get the heavy wooden chairs pulled out, Tamra appeared. Her hair was lightly curled and brighter than when I had first seen her, as if she had washed and shaped it, but it was as dry as if she had been sitting in the sun. She had also pulled back from her face with a pair of dark combs. She still wore gray tunic and trousers, but a blue scarf around her neck added a touch of color. All in all, she made a striking appearance. Talrin nodded to the empty space at his right. Tamra opened her mouth, then shut it quickly as Talrin pulled out her chair for her. Her ice blue eyes slashed like sun from a glacier. Talrin moved the chair so easily that I tried to edge mine back with one hand. It didn't move. I quickly reached down with both hands and lifted it by its curved arms, sliding it back. Black oak, shaped and bent into a flattened point without a crest at the height of the chair back. The curved back was supported by 4 spokes, twice the width used for household chairs. A flat black cushion covered the seat. If you are done inspecting the chair, Laris, would you join us? Sorry, the design... I sat down and edged the chair forward to the table. Again, it took 2 hands. Everyone waited, looking at Talrin. Go ahead, there's no blessing, no incantations, no mysticism, just good food. He reached for the platter of breads. After all, you have served yourselves. I will provide an explanation, as I promised. I reached for the cheeses before me, spearing several with the long, wooden-handled fork. Just ahead of Crystal, she had already taken a sour pear and a chestnut. Would you pass the cheeses? Ren asked. Her voice was flat. You done? I asked Crystal. Yes. When she wasn't giggling, her voice almost sang when she talked, but I didn't sound offended. At the other end of the table, Tamara had piled her plate with everything in sight. Sour pears, apples, breads, cheeses, and meat. Beside me, Crystal offered the meat platter. Thank you. She nodded, and after removing several slices, I took the serving plate from her and offered it to Rin. The blonde woman took twice what I had heaped onto my plate, without looking at me, leaving me still holding the platter. Rin, would you pass this to Merton? The woman still didn't look at me, but took the platter with a sigh and thrust it in front of Merton, almost hitting him in the nose as he bent forward. Thank you. Merton's voice was pleasant enough, but it sounded as though he had polished each word. Rin said nothing to him either. I lifted the mug, sipping gingerly, and found it was some sort of juice combination, light with a touch of sparkle. Crystal, to my right, had produced a small knife and dissected her sour pear into neat slices. Just as quickly, she had eaten nearly half the fruit. I tried not to gape, instead spearing some red berry jam over a thick slice of bread and munching through that, interpreting it with some yellow cheese. Where are you from? I finally asked Crystal. Oh, from Extina. I had never heard of Extina. A little village near Land's End. No one else has heard of it either. The small knife flashed, and the Krisnit lay in quarters. The pit removed nearly effortlessly. What about you? Wander not. Oh, is it true what they say about it? Spoiling the momentary impression of common dark beauty. What they say about it? I'd never heard anything said about it. You know, Crystal giggled again, that nothing happens there because the Institute really runs the Brotherhood. She popped 2 orange Krisnit quarters into her mouth, one right after the other. Oh, I choked on the last part of her question. The Institute running the Brotherhood? That collection of 4 buildings where people just gather to talk to each other? Are you all right, Laris? Broke in Tarn from the other end of the table. All conversation died away for a moment. I nodded, managing to swallow this suddenly very dry bread, and reached for the mug of fruit punch, ignoring the glint in Tamara's eyes as she watched my discomfort. Crystal, her eyes on me, brought forth the little knife, and with deft cuts, not even looking, created 4 miniature sandwiches out of a slab of white cheese, some dark bread, and 1 thick slab of buffalo. I swallowed again. You're sure you're all right? Crystal asked, her voice concerned for the first time. Yes, just surprised. I've been to the Institute many times, even heard my father speak there, but no one acted as though they were running anything at all, except their mouths. It was boring, very boring. I took another sip from the massive brown mug. You're right about one thing. Nothing ever happens in Wandernaut. I stopped, realizing that tears were welling up in the corner of Crystal's eyes. Did I say something? She shook her head, pursing her lips together. Rin had stopped shoveling her food and was listening, as was Sam on the other side of Crystal. Merton pretended not to listen as he played with a sour pear. Tamara, Talrin, and Dorothy were discussing shipping, or ships. Crystal swallowed. I waited, suddenly not as hungry as I thought. It's just, Crystal began, your father to even speak there, and you're younger than anyone here, and you have to do Danger Guild. She shook her head slowly. The sandwiches left neatly on her platter. My head seemed ready to lift off my shoulders. Is your father a master? Blurted out Rin. I shrugged. He never said so. He never did anything that made me think so, and he never wore black. I never thought about it. My mother's a skilled potter, people come from as far as Austria to buy her vases and figurines. My father was always the holder. You sound as though you're reconsidering, observed Merton. His voice was even more polished, as if oil-coated. I don't know. He's always talked a lot about the importance of order. I found it boring. Still do. Crystal sniffed. No mercy. Didn't really expect mercy from the Brotherhood. But what did she mean? Mercy? I finally asked. All of you, interrupted Talrin before Crystal could reply. I promised you an introduction and an explanation. I will try to make both short and then answer questions. Some questions I may not answer until later, but I will provide as much information as I can. Once again, even before they started, they were saying they were going to hide something. I stifled a snort. At the other end of the table, Tamara adopted a look of resignation. Only Samuel looked really interested in what Talrin might have to say. First, the Danger Guild. What is it, and why is it necessary? And from your point of view, why were you selected? Talrin took a sip from his mug. Stripped of all the piety, rhetoric, and rationalization, the Danger Guild is simply a quest, a series of duties, or an exile, or some combination of all three, to enable you to discover whether you belong in Recluce, and if so, in what capacity. None of you have been happy in what you have been doing. Unfocused discontent is contagious and leads to disorder. Disorder leads to chaos, and chaos to evil. After this meal, you each have a choice. You may accept Danger Guild training, which can last several months, sometimes longer, or you can accept immediate exile. If you choose training, then depending on the results of that training, you may be offered one or several options on how to fulfill your Danger Guild obligation. Again, if you like none of the options, at that point you may choose exile. All exiles are transported with their available funds and traveling gear to one of 3 outside ports. Depending on the time of year, those are Freetown in Kandar, Brista in Nordla, or Swartheld in Afrit, north of Hammer. At the last 2 names, most of the eyebrows around the table went up. I'd heard of Brista and certainly wouldn't have been pleased to land there. Nordla was cold, and Bristol was as far north as you can get for an all-year port. Above Bristol, the winter ice sheets closed the coast. It may not bring you more than you can comfortably carry on your person. And if any of you choose exile, the next departure will be about 10 to 12 days. You will remain in Nyland, although you may participate in any or none of the Danger Guild training as you please. For those of you considering Danger Guild, training begins tomorrow. There will be classes on the details of what the Danger Guild obligation entails, on the geography and customs of the most major countries outside Recluce, on their economies and trade, on how money is handled. Customs surrounding funds do vary, by the way, and on weapons, familiarization, and self-defense. We will also provide some additional background on the Brotherhood, since some of you may choose or be offered the option of performing your Danger Guild in some capacity with the Brotherhood, depending on your own inclinations and the process of your training. As always, your participation is voluntary, with 2 stipulations. First, you should choose not to participate in any training. You will be regarded as choosing exile. Second, you may not leave Nyland. Any attempt to do will result in confinement until you can be exiled. Voluntary? Snorted Rin. You don't play the Brotherhood's game, and you're locked up until you can be shipped off to Nordland Hammer. You have already made a choice that you cannot accept living in Recluce, Talon observed mildly. No, you made that decision based on your rules, countered the blonde. Talrin shrugged his broad shoulders. The rules, as you called them, are accepted and honored by virtually everyone in Recluce. Do you honestly believe otherwise? That a handful of masters and brothers who have never raised a violent hand in centuries could override the will of our people? I almost laughed at that. The masters controlled all the education. They didn't need swords. Besides, a bunch of the boring sheep would agree to any rules that would send the wolves away. But no one raised that question, not Tamara nor Rin. Crystal giggled again and sliced her drying sandwiches into halves, which she quickly ate. How could she eat so much and stay so slender? I couldn't imagine. Why do you teach us about so many countries and not just the area where we will be sent? The calm voice was Samuel's. You may end up seeing more of the world than you think, and we will also like you to have some idea of where you may end up. Also, you will find Hemmerians in Nordla and Kandarians in Hammer. Knowing there are differing customs has proven useful to others and should help you. Merton gave his head the smallest of shakes. Tamara stifled a grin, although I couldn't see what was funny. Rin, beside me, took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Crystal cut a green apple into a series of intricate slices arranged around the edge of her plate, but no one asked another question, and Talrin volunteered nothing more about the Danger Guild itself. You will probably have more questions. Anyone who does not want to undertake the Danger Guild training, please stay mute when we finish eating. After the meal, you will be shown to your rooms, and you may spend the afternoon any way you like, including visiting the market or the harbor, or anywhere else in Nyland. Breakfast will be at the first bell. At the second bell, the first class will begin. You will be shown the class area on your way to your rooms. Talon stood up. Please finish as you like. I will be in the next room. When you are done, gather your things and join me there. He pushed back his chair and departed, leaving the door behind him ajar. Tamara raised her eyebrows, saying nothing. High-handed, murmured Rin. Crystal began eating the apple slices she had laid out around her plate. Merton pocketed 2 hard rolls and an apple, and Samuel frowned, either at Talon's departure or Merton's theft, or for some reason of his own. I took a last swallow from the mug, deciding against another slice of cheese. Enough was enough, and I was ready to find out what lay in store for me. Tamara and I were the first ones on our feet. She hadn't eaten everything on her plate either. As I glanced at her plate, our eyes crossed, hers looking at my partially eaten meal. I had to grin. And this time, she grinned back momentarily, although her expression hardened into a bored look. I held the door for her, but she nodded. Go ahead, Laris. I'll hold my own doors. As you wish, lady. And I'm certainly no lady. Not in the way you meant. I didn't mean anything other than courtesy. If we don't like simple manners. I let go of the black wood of the door and stepped back into the hallway toward the washrooms where my staff and pack were stored. Touchy too. You should have red air. I ignored her comments, although I could feel the flush in my face. Healthy circulation, if thin-skinned. Did the woman needle everyone, or just those she could bully? I wished my thoughts were as quick as hers, but trying to match her would just make the situation worse. The staff was where I'd left it, the Lorcan wood a shade warmer to my touch. Was that because we were in an island? Did it have some response of its own magic or danger? I shook my head. Why the frown? Samuel's voice was concerned. He probably always sounded concerned. He looked like his vocation was trying to do good whether anyone wanted it or not. Just thinking, wondering about all the black, whether it meant magic. It probably does. The Brotherhood couldn't have shaped the harbor or the cliffs without some fantastic forces. But they mean well, I think. So did Heldry the Mad. The Brotherhood doesn't hold mass executions, Samuel smiled. I shrugged on my pack. They'll settle for Dangergeld and exile. That way the deaths are on someone else's hands. You are rather bitter for someone so young. That's easy to say when you're forced on Dangergeld for a reason you don't know by a group that enforces unspoken rules and unsaid ways. That stopped him long enough for me to step around him and past Merton. Tamara's back was in front of me as she passed the table. No one was left there. Even Crystal had left several of the delicately cut apple slices on her plate, where they were now turning brown. I followed Tamara into the waiting room beyond. There's no choice, that voice was Dorothy's, and she was facing Tolerant. Tolerant smiled a smile that wasn't really a smile, since his black eyes were hard as the stone of the paved floor underfoot. You can choose either. Your actions are already made. That choice is necessary. What? Because I wouldn't say with a man who turned out to be an unfeeling and unthinking brute? No, because you crippled him before you left him. I winced. While there was a hardness to Dorothy, I hadn't just seen how hard she was. Yet she looked vulnerable standing before Tolerant, even though he was no taller than she was. Dorothy turned away, her lips tight. Merton and Samuel had followed me. Now only Rin and Crystal were missing. Dorothy glanced at me, saw my black staff, and stumbled backward toward Tamara, also carrying her staff. Dorothy cringed away from the redhead. Tamara and I exchanged glances. She shrugged. After a moment, so did I. Clearly, as I had recognized from the encounters with the Shrezin and the traitor, I had some power associated with the staff. What it was, that was another question. Unfortunately, everyone else thought I had some power too, and they were just as clearly very wary of it. Wonderful. Heading into a Dangergeld, cursed with an ability I hadn't even known I'd had, while the whole world ready to pounce on me for it. Sent for reasons I still didn't understand, and which no one would explain. Just wonderful. As I pondered, Crystal and Rin had appeared. You're all here, good, said Talon. Follow me. Before I end this video, I just wanted to let you all know that my upload schedule is I will be uploading Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. So 3 times a week, you'll have 3 videos every week. Now cue the new outro.